Hello, it's a real delight to be here at ViteConf talking about making an extensible meta framework with Nuxt. My name is Daniel Rowe. I lead the Nuxt core team. I'm also involved in a couple of other projects as well, such as Magic Regex, which is a type-safe way of building regular expressions with no runtime overhead. Fontaine, which is a CSS-only approach to reducing or almost eliminating layout shift due to web fonts. Elk, which is a Mastodon client for built in Nuxt. And of course, you can check out my website for more about what I'm involved with. Or if you want to contact me, I'd love to talk to you if you want to get involved in open source. And my calendar is always open. I'm also a Google GDE and a Microsoft MVP. And you can get in contact with me on any number of different social channels. I would love to be in contact. And this is where I am. I'm based in the northeast of the UK. It's a blustery, wet day today, but and this is what I'm seeing in front of me, pretty much. There isn't actually a cat there right now, but I do live here with 3 cats and a dog and my family as well. And I love all kinds of things open source, and it's been a real delight to be involved in Nuxt and in some of the other projects I'm involved in too. And to help out, if you ever need help with anything that I'm building or working on, feel free to get in contact. And I'll be here probably cozy with a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, and it would be nice to help. I'd love to do that. Today I'm talking about Nuxt, and if you haven't come across it, Nuxt is a progressive framework built on Vue.js and Nitro. So Vue for the front-end user interface that you'll be building your app in, Nitro for the server framework which powers it, which we've actually developed as part of our work on Nuxt, but which is now totally framework agnostic and works with and powers other frameworks too. And I'm sure you'll be hearing more about those later, or have already heard about them. Nuxt aims to be a zero-effort start. So it should have great developer experience. You should be able to get going straight away without having to focus on the things that will hold you back from what you're building. So friction, we want to reduce or eliminate if possible. And because of that, we also really want to work hard at making sure that the best practices are built in. So when you actually start going with Nuxt, you don't need to be worrying about having to configure or set things up right. It should be done for you straight out of the box. And I think one of the other things that's really unique about Nuxt is that it is configurable and extensible, both by you and also by a big modules ecosystem of different integrations that make Nuxt possible. And it's that really that I want to talk about today in this talk. And there are 3 things that we've done, particularly to make Nuxt extensible and configurable. And I want to talk a little bit about those. And it might be more relevant, particularly for module authors, but I hope to convince you that anyone using Nuxt can be a module author and can actually take advantage of some of these things in your day-to-day development of Nuxt. So the first thing that Nuxt offers is a hookable experience. So actually powered by a library we developed for this very purpose called Hookable. And the concept is pretty simple. This is how you would actually use it as a library author, or how we use it within Nuxt. You create a global hookable instance. We attach this to Nuxt itself. At build time, there's a build set of hooks. Different modules or user code or internal Nuxt code can then hook into different lifecycle events, which get called with potentially some arguments, maybe not. And these hooks can then be called and awaited at different times. And that is a really, really good pattern for how to hook into a single process or even a multi-threaded process, but from different places. And so we offer this to modules, and it's a way of actually making Nuxt almost fully extensible as long as we put the hooks in the right place. We also have a couple of cool features that we're able to build into by having this hook-first approach. So for example, recently, earlier this year, we added support for console create task, which is being pioneered by the Chrome DevTools team, which is a fantastic initiative to improve the the ability of debuggers to show exactly how a task that's being run, for example, in a hook, relates to the original code that added it. So for example, this is what it used to look like before in a DevTools panel without console create task. So sort of anonymous hooks, and really the stack trace just took you into the code of Hookable itself. But with the create task support, we're able to have some really, really nice debugging, which takes you directly to the thing that's calling the hook and the hook itself that you've added. So that works quite well. We also have, it's really very, very configurable. So aside from having things like first class type support, we also have different kinds of runners. So you can run tasks in parallel, or you can run them synchronously or asynchronously or sequentially, and you can provide your own task runners if you need. We also have a really great debugging mode, which you can enable just out of the box with a separate utility. In Nuxt, you just pass debug true in your config, but if you're using it under the hood, you can just use create debugger, and it allows you to actually spy on all the different hooks that are being run, the arguments that are passed to them, how long they take to run, anything that you might want to do like that. And so for Nuxt users, it can be a good or useful debugging step, maybe even more useful for Nuxt authors or people who are wanting to integrate deeply with Nuxt. So Hookable is definitely worth, and this is a screenshot of the Nuxt DevTools, which also gives you a view of the hooks that are running. And actually we use Hookable four times in Nuxt. So we use it as the Nuxt build tool. We actually use it in the Nitro build tool as well. So they have a similar architecture. And we also use it in the Nuxt runtime. So actually in your code, in your app, you can also have events, like a mounted event, or when page transitions happen, there are more events that happen, and you can hook into those as well. We found it to be a really, really useful pattern, and it has helped make Nuxt really extensible. So that's the first piece of what we've tried to do. We've used hooks. We've made Nuxt itself and the runtime Nuxt instance hookable. And the second thing is that we're aiming to make Nuxt also pluggable. So not just that you can hook into things that are already running, but you should also be able to swap things out. You should be able to override something that's core to Nuxt. So for example, the first, probably most obvious one is that our bundler is swappable. So Vite is first class with Nuxt, it's installed by default, and Vite really makes a lot of cool things we do with Nuxt possible in a way that some of the other bundlers don't. So Vite, we love Vite. But we've actually, from the beginning, built Vite to be swappable. So you can provide your own bundler implementation if you wanted to use Parcel, or if you want to use Bundle, or whatever else you might want to use. It's technically possible to do. We ship Webpack, and there's also an RSPack port in progress. But again, you could do it. You could provide whatever you want, as long as you're able to provide an import which has a bundle function that takes Nuxt and outputs a result at the end. That's all we really care about. And so it's possible to do this sort of at a very high level. But it's not just there. Almost all of the features that we build for Nuxt, we build as modules that could be replaced or overridden by other modules. And it means we have to adopt the pluggable infrastructure ourselves. So almost all the features we build, we have actually built in this kind of way, and they can be swapped in or out. So for example, I created a module for Ionic built on Nuxt, and it has to largely swap out the Vue router implementation for a slightly different routing implementation that's used in the Ionic framework. And it was relatively straightforward to do for exactly this kind of reason. But then the third and almost most powerful of all of these is the fact that the Nuxt architecture is layerable. So, for example, we expose core Nuxt components like Nuxt page or Nuxt welcome. You probably wouldn't use that in production. Or Nuxt link. And all of these components can be overridden by modules or users. Or we expose key auto imports, things like Vue's ref, or Nuxt has some composables like navigate to, or use state, or use async data. And all of these things also could be overridden, even if I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. And so it means that as you develop an integration and need to do something like this, it's possible to do quite a lot of different things. I should also call out the fact that really very much the way we add features to Nuxt isn't just by adding additional modules, but these modules then integrate with things like Vite and the whole build process. That's one of the most common patterns of adding features and functionality to a framework like Nuxt. And so this is also possible by something called Unplugin, developed by Anthony Fu, which I could not commend to you highly enough. And I'll show you a little bit about that a little bit later on. So thirdly, we want to make Nuxt, therefore, modular. So it's not just hookable, it's not just pluggable, but it is actually modular as well. So we have a whole modules ecosystem, which you might have come across at nuxt.com/modules. You can find it, a database of them. And this is our sort of offer for modules. So they're distributable. So you can actually build one just in your project yourself and just use it purely internally. You can also publish it to maybe an internal registry at your company and use it across your projects. And you can also publish it to NPM and use it as a package that other people use. So modules are reusable, therefore, and that makes them useful because you can take any functionality that you often use in a project, wrap it up, and adding it is incredibly simple in future. We offer first-class tooling for it. So we've built utilities like Unbuild and MakeDist and others under the hood, which we've wrapped up all into a Nuxt module builder, which is a CLI and build tool, which abstracts a lot of the complexity away of making Nuxt modules. So it means that we have a starter template that you can get going on if you want to create a new module, which is just nuxi init my module -t module, and that module template will get you going to start with. We also have a database of Nuxt modules, so it's just a Git repo, which is then served up by an API, and so that API can be queryable by Nuxt itself. It can also be by our CLI, but it can also be used by other utilities. For example, there's a great Visual Studio Code plugin or extension called Nuxter, and Nuxter is able to query the dataset and install modules for you in a UI, which is quite useful because, again, we have this sort of ecosystem. So it's not just that you're distributing things on your own, but the things you create are discoverable by others and installable more easily. We also, particularly with Nuxt 3, we worked hard to create an SDK with Nuxt Kit. The idea being that if you use, so rather than use really low-level utilities that hook deeply into and require understanding of the Nuxt build process and build tool itself, you can use utilities that are semantic and geared towards the purpose that you're trying to do. Something like add component, if you want to add a sort of available component in a user's project. That means that if we change the implementation, your code doesn't need to change. It can just stay the same. The same is true, for example, with add build plugin. So if you are, for example, adding an unplugin, which has methods for Webpack and Vite, if you just add it with add build plugin, then when RSPack comes along, you don't have to change your code because, again, the SDK is going to take care of handling that additional bundler integration for you out of the box as unplugin adds support. So that kind of approach where you have a semantic helper and you have this library of useful sets of tools that module authors can use, we hope will make Nuxt modules useful for the future, like far beyond the actual intended lifespan that people might have had in Vue when they were created in the first place. So I thought I could just very, very quickly show you what that looks like in practice. Not a huge amount, but just what it might feel like to build a Nuxt module. So this is a new Nuxt project. It's not got a lot going for it right now, so there's nothing really there, although I have fired up the dev server. To create a new module, so out of the box, Nuxt will look in a modules directory. So if you're creating a new local module and you just want to test something, you can easily create a module there and add some code to your project. So in this case, we'll just create a new module and call it ViteConf. And I'll just show you how we might override something. We'll add a component in this case, and we'll create we'll create the component here. We'll create runtime Nuxt welcome.view. So out of the box, Nuxt ships with this welcome component, which looks a little bit like this. Well, this is it, although it's highly zoomed in, so it might not look exactly like this on your screen. And we might want to override that in our Nuxt module. So we're going to resolve it first, runtime Nuxt welcome.view. We're going to give it a name. It's just going to be called Nuxt welcome. And we're actually going to give it a priority. Resolve. We're going to give it a priority so it overrides the default one. And so that should be good. Now we might need to restart the server using bun in this particular case. And we should find that we now have overridden the default Nuxt component, Nuxt welcome component. In fact, you should even be able to see, let's see, do we have, yeah, so it's now pointing to a different location. And so that is quite a simple module to be able to add. And we might add a few more things. So we have great type support for modules. So we can, for example, have some default options. We might have enabled false, and we'll just get the options here. So we'll find that we, for example, if options enabled, return. So we might do something like this. And in our Nuxt config, we should be able to do something like this. ViteConf, so we'll have, again, type support for it, and then we can decide whether or not it's going to be enabled or not. So obviously, it wouldn't be as simple as that, but you might be able to, again, add some really nice, simple configuration of your module. So you might be able to have something in your Nuxt config, which defines the configuration, like an API or base URL or something like that. And then in your module, you're able to abstract all the code that deals with that integration very simply. Now, in this particular case, this is a local module that we've created. You might want to add one more generally. So we actually have Nuxt support for that. So you could just add a module, a Nuxt.js, Tailwind, CSS, or something like that. I actually want to show you an unreleased feature. It's going to be in the next release of Nuxt, but we're just going to add module, add Tailwind CSS. This is an integration. And it will probably have to install it. Yeah. So forgive the momentary fetching from npm. And actually what it's gone ahead and done is it's queried our module database, which we have on that Nuxt modules repo. It's identified that our Tailwind integration is called Nuxt.js Tailwind CSS, but it might be called something else based on your, so if you're publishing a third-party module, for example, it might be your own scope. And it's basically installed that for us, and it's also changed our Nuxt config now. So we actually now have the module in our Nuxt config, which means that that's all we needed to do in this particular case. You might find that if we were adding some outdated module, you don't need a module for Axios anymore in Nuxt. It will give you a bit of a warning again from the API to tell you that that's not something you want to install. And yeah, we don't want to install it. But it's as simple as that. Add a module integration from some kind of external source, someone else's module. But if you're installing it yourself, you just have to add it to your own modules directory. We might do something else. So we might add that build plugin I mentioned. So we could just use create unplugin. Oh, we will be able to do that here. I would recommend actually installing it as a dependency. But just for now, we can create an unplugin and actually just do something like this. So we're creating an unplugin, and we might want to have a transform, and we are simply going to be able to replace something there. And again, forgive the simplicity of this, but you could do any amount of things. We're going to replace code, replace welcome to ViteConf with welcome to ViteConf 2023. And what is it complaining about? Oh, it needs a name. I'm going to call it name is super advanced plugin. And we should be good to go. I might have to restart the server. Yeah. Notice that our Tailwind module has kicked in, and so we're getting some nice default styles from there, which is great. But let me just quickly disable the Tailwind module because it's listening on a different port and I haven't forwarded it in this particular container. There we go. Well, I think it might have been auto-forwarded. Let's try that again. I'm not sure exactly what's going on with the port forwarding, but you can see that the actual HTML code is coming back correctly as welcome to ViteConf 2023. Let's try opening a new window here. Yeah, forgive the port forwarding issue. But basically, you can see the Nuxt module is adding that transform, and it's done it in a completely extensible way. So whether you're using Webpack, whether you're using Vite, which obviously we hope you will be, whatever it is, it should just work. So I hope you'll build your own integrations, whether it's something like this one, which is incredibly simple and useful maybe in a particular project, or whether it's something that is distributable on the Nuxt API and you use and other people use. I really hope that you are in fact able to build a module and use it. If you're interested in doing anything else with Nuxt, feel free to check out the documentation on nuxt.com. You can also follow Nuxt on X, Twitter, or on Mastodon. And we have a Discord server, which is pretty active, and I'd love to see you there. And of course, you should feel free to contact me any way that would work for you. I would love to hear from you. It's been a real privilege to talk, and looking forward to some of the other talks later on. Thank you so much.